Every day, we challenge ourselves to live up to our name. New Development Bank. Created by BRICS countries. Mobilizing new ideas.
New talents. New investments.
To support economic growth across BRICS countries and beyond. At NDB, we do things differently. Social impact through economic strength. By financing sustainable infrastructure. From the physical to the digital. Driving an inclusive economy, a low-carbon transition, and prosperity for all. How do we do all this? The first multilateral development bank built by developing economies for developing economies. Economic impact that makes a difference. A difference for the people who matter the most. New Development Bank.
Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody, to our panel session, parallel session number 16. We will be discussing this morning the infrastructure for inclusive and sustainable development, experience from the New Development Bank, the Global South, and key development partners. So first of all, I would like to thank you, ADB, Asia Development Bank, for organizing this event, and also Asia, I will forget, I tried to memorize so many times, Asia Pacific Finance and Development Institute, right? So thank you for organizing this memorable event. It's really good, fruitful discussions. So for this panel, we will have this dynamic. Firstly, our colleague Xiao San, Senior Specialist for Independent Evaluation at the New Development Bank, will make a short presentation. And then we have a round of discussion with our distinguished panelists. I will introduce, not in order here, but you can say Sanjay Kumar. He's the Director General of Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office, DMEO, from the Government of India. We also have the presence of Madame Veronique Saz-Lozach, correctly? Chief Evaluator from the Independent Evaluation Department of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. We also have Madame Xiaojie Zhang, Regional Manager for Asia, South-South, and Triangular Cooperation for the International Fund for Agriculture and Development, IFAD. And finally, we have Madame Lungile Liberto Tom, Principal Investor Officer of Development Bank of Southern Africa, DBSA. So the idea of this panel is, I know we are in the Asia Evaluation Week, but the idea here is to bring experiences not only from Asia, but also from our member countries, from the NDB, New Development Bank, and also the Global South. So we're having this new dynamic in the world. The Global South is having more and more experiences, and we want for you to have some experience from the field and also experience from cross-cutting and cross-fertilization. So firstly, I'll give the floor to our colleague Xiao Sun. He will make the presentation. Please take the podium. And a short presentation about New Development Bank and some of the evaluations we have been conducting.
Thank you very much, Henrik. Dear colleagues, welcome to the session 16. Today, I'm Sun Chao, senior professional from the Independent Evaluation Office of the New Development Bank. Before the panel discussion, I will do around 15 minutes of a short presentation, which will quickly introduce you the background of the NDB, the role of the independent evaluation function of the bank, and also our experience on developing sustainable infrastructures based on the 2 project performance evaluation we have done recently. This is the first time we participate the Asia Evaluation Week offline. So I think maybe not all the colleagues very familiar about the name NDB. We are a multilateral development bank established by the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa in 2014 during the 6th BRICS Summit. Purpose of the bank is to mobilize resources for infrastructure and sustainable development projects for the developing countries and emerging economies. The bank opened the business in July 2015 with a headquarters located in Shanghai, China. Our initial authorized capital is $100 billion. The paid-in capital by the 5 BRICS countries as the founders of the bank is $10 billion, which has placed NDB as the largest multilateral development banks globally. As one of the youngest international financial institutions, we try to be as agile and efficient as possible. In NDB, we aim to structure, negotiate, review, and approve projects within a period of 6 months without compromising the quality. As the first multilateral development banks fully established by the developing country and for the developing country, we have a unique governance and shareholding structure, equal shareholding and equal voting power among the 5 founding BRICS countries, and no member holds veto power on any matter, which is very, very different from the traditional Bretton Woods institutions. NDB's member countries open to the members of the United Nations. The bank's membership expansion started from the 2021 with 3 new full members as of today, including Bangladesh, the UAE, and Egypt. Within the bank, we have the 5 senior management from all the founding members. Our president of the bank now is a former president of the Federative Republic of Brazil, Madam Dilma Rousseff. Sustainability is fundamental to the founding principle of NDB. We focus on developing of sustainable infrastructures, which is also the key priority for the emerging economies in the coming decades. By the end of July this year, 98 projects have been approved by our board of directors. The total committed amount of development finance is above $32 billion. As you can see on the second pie chart, over 60% of our portfolio are investment of sustainable infrastructures, including the clean energy, transportation such as road, airport, and metro, as well as the digital infrastructures. Since we opened the business in July 2015, we have completed our first 5-year annual strategy, which covers the period of 2017 to 2021. And now we are implementing our second annual strategy for the period of 2022 to 2026, which you can find a copy of the general strategy on the table outside this room. The title of our second strategy is Scaling Up Development Finance for a Sustainable Future, which has set the course for NDB's evolution into a leading provider of solutions for infrastructure and sustainable development for developing countries. Under this overarching strategic framework, we will continue to enhance our capacity to mobilize resources at scale, to finance diversified type of projects, employ sophisticated financial instruments and products, and also to build a robust institutional profile. The general strategy includes 6 major targets, which reflect our primary aspiration for the next 5 years. Within the 6 targets, Four of them to further highlight, which are very close to the topic today. Over the next 5 years, we target to provide $30 billion in total volume of approved financing from the bank's own balance sheet. Among the $30 billion, we plan to extend around 30% of total financing in local currencies for the global South countries. Also, 30% of total financing are planned to be provided to non-solvent operations. Most importantly, 40% of the total project to be approved are planned for contributing to climate change mitigation, adaptation, including the energy transition, which will be around $12 billion. Similarly with other members of the MDB family, there are also some principles guide our daily work, including the focus of the environmental, social interest, the gender equality, so on and so forth. But among all the guiding principles, the use of the country system in environmental, social, and governance, as well as the project procurement on a risk-based methodology, is a defining feature of our approach, which is also slightly different compared with the traditional multilateral development banks, especially the Bretton Woods institution. For NDB's operation, we will take the country system as a starting point and see where weakness may need to be addressed to meet our requirement. This is also in line with our intention to establishing a relationship of full respect with our borrowers from the global South countries. Our evaluations on two renewable energy projects, which we will highlight later, also suggest that this country system-oriented approach will enhance local frameworks, implementation capacity to the long-term benefits of a country's development path. After completing our first 5-year general strategy in 2021, it has been recognized that NDB's second strategy cycle from the period of 2022 to 2026 maybe is the right time window to work on improving quality. Under this context, our office, the independent evaluation function of the bank, has been established in April 2022, when our first Director General, Mr. Ashwani Muthu, joined the bank. As the youngest function of the bank, we undertake independent evaluations of the bank's policies, instruments, processes, and operations with the aim of identifying lessons and providing recommendations for improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the bank. You can find a copy of our evaluation policies on the table outside this room as well within the paper folder, which has defined our objective as a bank's independent evaluation function, including promote accountability by providing an evidence-based assessment of results, generate a license, good practices, knowledge for improving the bank's performance, and also contribute to promoting enhanced quality and results of the bank's activities. Within the three objectives, we understand that learning lessons from our past experience is an important part of NDB's strategic planning, which will in turn continually improve our project quality and results of NDB's lending and operations. Although our office has a very short history, as you can see, only 17 months, but we already completed 4 evaluations by September. Within the 4 evaluations, 3 of them, as shown on the screen, are project performance evaluation, which focus on the sustainable infrastructures developed by the bank for our member countries, including one road project in India to improve the connectivity, which is a solvent operation, was evaluated last year. The full evaluation report and the NDB management responses to our recommendation are available on our website. 2 on lending operations through the National Development Bank of Brazil and South Africa for promoting the clean and renewable energy, with NDB financing amount in total $600 million. Evaluation of those 2 on lending projects has been recently completed by myself and my colleague, Henrik, and copies of the evaluation lens can be found in the paper file folder, which already summarize all the key findings and recommendations. Those 2 on lending projects have a lot of similar features in common. This is one of the reasons why we do them at the same time, separately. In NDB, we have a very specific policy which guides NDB's partnership with the National Development Bank and also the loans to the national financial intermediaries. Both projects were designed and implemented both on those NFI policies. Also, both projects are two-step loans that the borrowers, the DBIC, and also the BNDES, who are also the overall project implementation agencies. They were responsible for identifying, selecting, financing, and monitoring the sub-projects which are eligible for NDB's funding. Selection of the sub-project was based on the criteria which will allow us to determine that they would contribute to the impact and outcomes as set in the project design and monitoring framework, have sufficient level of readiness for smooth implementation and swift disbursement. And also they must be in line with our policies on economic and financial analysis, also the principles and also the country's requirement regarding the project procurement, environmental and social impact management. Feature of the two projects also impact our evaluation approach accordingly, because both the borrowers, they are 100% owned by the government of NDB member countries, acting through the Ministry of Finance. For the case of South Africa, the National Treasury. They are important in financing the development priorities of their governments, especially for the areas where the private finance is not available or need to be further effectively mobilized. As the government's major instrument for long-term development finance, both of the two institutions are very key actors to implement governance policies and plans. For example, in the case of DBSA, the loan we have done in South Africa, the country has a very well-designed national level program to support achieving the goals of energy mix set by the government's Integrated Resources Plan, the IRP, which called as the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program, the RAPE. The RAPE is a competitive tender process designed to facilitate private sector investment into grid connected renewable energy generation. The independent power producer from the private sector are invited to submit bids for renewable energy projects. Once they are appointed as the preferred bidders, they are required to sign a standard non-negotiable 20 years power producer agreements with the South Africa National Electricity Company, the Eskom, in local currency. All the 15 sub-projects financed by the DBIC through our loan were selected through the RAPE bid windows, which were also released in line with the government's determinations. We also further understand during the evaluation that DBIC has not only been an active player in funding of the renewables for the country, but also one of the sponsors of the RAPE, together with other South Africa government agencies, such as the Department of Energy and also the National Treasury. So accordingly, a very balanced combination of evaluation criteria for both public sector and also the private sector operations have been applied by us for the overall project level and also the sub-project level, which you will find more details about the assessment in our full evaluation reports. The full reports will be published on our website very soon, but I'd like to share some key findings with you today. First of all, significant amount of co-financing mobilized by the borrowers through leveraging their status as a national financial intermediaries. For example, the loan we gave them is a $600 million funding, which eventually mobilized over $3 billion as a resources of finance via the two on-lending facilities. Accordingly, both two projects' outcomes are substantially above their objective and target set as a design. The planned renewable energy capacity, for example, the case of the DBSA, was 375 megawatt by at least 3 sub-projects. The actual deliverables by the end of last year, 2022, is 14 sub-projects with an installed power generation capacity over 1,100 megawatts in 12 local communities across 4 provinces of South Africa. Thirdly, swift loan disbursement made by NDB. which is mainly benefited from the robust project pipeline of the two national development banks. Adequate flexibility also demonstrated by a new development bank, which also further contributed to a comparatively smooth project implementation. In summary, we concluded that the two on-lending projects were generally successful, mainly attributed to below three factors. Number one, financial and operational strengths of the national financial intermediate borrower, especially their substantial experience in developing the sustainable infrastructure with the private sector investors. Their strong technical capacity from the private sector borrowers and also the product developers on the ground. Sophisticated institutional framework, as we just discussed, the South Africa RAPE, and also a comparatively robust country system. Furthermore, both two projects promoted local participation, the job creation, socio-economic, and enterprise development for the local community. Although this has not been foreseen or clearly defined at design when NDB was established a few years ago. This may actually benefited from the private sector borrowers' strong awareness of the ESG and also the requirement of a country program. Again, for example, in the case of South Africa, during the bid windows, the government, the IPP office require the bidders to submit their plan for the socio-economic development for the local community, which will be benefited by the sub-projects. But there are also some other room for improvement, mainly for the bank, for NDB. For example, we feel there's an inadequate analysis on the financial additionality, specifically how the US dollar loans provided by the bank through the two on-lending facilities really catalyze additional funding for the sub-projects in local currency. Considering all the sub-loans are lended by our borrowers to the sub-borrowers are in local currency, and most importantly, only the local currency revenues will be generated from those renewable energy infrastructure within the countries. We also find there are very limited non-financial additionality provided by the bank through the project, but considering we are a very young bank, so we still have some room to further improve. Also, the attentions paid to the knowledge management communications also not very sufficient. Lastly, this is a very interesting topic we also identified during the evaluation. An exit strategy was not developed for waste from the spent renewable energy infrastructures. During the mission for the evaluation, we talked with some key stakeholders of sub-projects that what would happen with the spare parts and farms, such as the wind farms, solar PV farms, after 20 or 25 years of their production. We noted that this was a topic which had not been received adequate attention during the project design, during the implementation. But in some research, we also found that international recycling of the solar PV panels and wind turbine blades is still in the early stage of development, which probably an area that a multilateral development bank can spend more energy and effort to support the global initiative. Based on the evaluation findings, we have 6 recommendations to NDB management. I'm not going to go through all of them because you got more details within the lens. But the first 2 I want to further highlight, which is also very relevant to the discussion today. Firstly, we recommend the bank further enhance and consolidate our partnerships with the national financial intermediaries and conducting an in-depth review of our member country system. NDB need to continually collaborate our approach for operating in specific contexts of our member countries. Secondly, we also need to proactively continually review options, increase its local currency lending in both Brazil and South Africa to provide suitable financing for sustainable infrastructure, such as renewable energy plants, which only generate the local currency revenues. This will help our borrowers from the global South countries to mitigate the foreign exchange risk and reduce the borrower's dependencies on the swap markets which will involve significant costs. For NDB, actually, now as of today, we are already one of the largest issuer in China interbank market for the Panda Bank, Xiongmao Zhai. We are the largest international financial intermediate issuer in China Interbank since 2016. But you also aware a few weeks ago, there was a BRICS summit happened in South Africa. Just a few days before the BRICS summit, NDB also issued the first local currency bond in South Africa in Rand, which is 1 billion Rand. It's a very successful issue. I think before we move to the discussion by our distinguished panelists today, please allow me to quickly wrap up the key takeaways. The conclusion of our evaluation of the two lending projects actually are very in line with a very good case study completed by OECD a few years ago, titled as a Financing Climate Futures, the Role of National Development Banks in Brazil and South Africa. We believe that national financial intermediaries, the NFIs, are very key actors in infrastructure financing in the global south countries and could help mobilize commercial capital for low emission, climate resilient infrastructure. Additionally, the NFIs are on transition from their traditional roles as a provider of long-term finance for infrastructure to enablers and mobilizers of other sources of finance. Our experience also indicates that transparent use of country's system will be one of the best ways to improve a country's own capacity and achieve better long-term development results. Lastly, the evaluation also proves that a multi-stakeholder collaboration will be very critical to close the large infrastructure financing gap across the global south and more broadly to realize the objective of the UN 2030 agenda. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the session, and I hope you also feel this presentation is useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chao. Thank you for this introduction, and thank you very much for showing us some of the challenges that the New Development Bank, and not only the New Development Bank is facing, but also the Global South, the members of the bank. And the importance, I would like to highlight some things that are related to our panel for infrastructure, for inclusive and sustainable development. The use of country systems is really important. What we will do with the future of the waste of these renewable energies, what we will do with the spare parts, so how we will be sustainable not only during the implementation, execution, but also after for the future. This is a really interesting finding and a really interesting topic for future discussions. And also the importance of the national financial institutions, like local government development banks, like DBSA. That's why we will pass the word for Ms. Lungile Tom, that's the Director, Principal Investment Officer of the Development Bank of Southern Africa, and to show us the importance of these actors in development, especially in sustainable development, and its role not only to South Africa, but also for the neighboring countries and the BRICS countries. Lungile Tom, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hendrik. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me here. For those of you who are not familiar with the DBSA, the Development Bank of Southern Africa is a South African-owned DFI, so that's Development Finance Institution. And our mandate really lies at the core of infrastructure development across South Africa, as well as the rest of the African region. Our mandate spans across energy infrastructure, ICT infrastructure, social infrastructure such as hospitals, transport infrastructure. So it's really quite a broad mandate, but looking at the underdevelopment in the region, concentration has primarily been in energy. As you may all be familiar, the region is quite underdeveloped from an energy infrastructure perspective, particularly the country that I come from as well. where we have a shortage currently of energy capacity. And the bank is quite key in driving that investment and driving that infrastructure development to grow the energy capacity of the country. So really, in terms of, you know, our core focus, we try and ensure that at the core of what we do is also a key focus on ESG matters, as well as what has been spoken about, which is a theme of this panel discussion, which centers around sustainability as well as inclusivity as well. So in the work that we do, you know, one may think of inclusivity as quite broad, but when it comes to the country that I come from, there have been quite a number of underserved groups in our population, in communities, in different parts of the country. So what we try and do is that in terms of assessing in impact, development impact, is to ensure that there is inclusivity when it comes to the communities where infrastructure is invested in or funded in by the bank. And how do we do this? We find different ways in terms of incorporating the underserved or marginalized individuals within our society in South Africa by supporting the funding needs of those populations into investing in infrastructure in the country. And the program that Chow outlined earlier, which was the Renewable Energy Procurement Program in South Africa, was quite key in really incorporating large, a wider or broader, should I say, populations within the country in crowding in their participation in those infrastructure projects alongside the international investors that are coming in to deploy their funds. So we've been quite instrumental in supporting, from a funding perspective, the equity contributions of those of local communities. So we have local communities that actually have shareholding in some of these infrastructure projects. That speaks to the inclusivity. We have previously marginalized communities that now have shareholding in some of these infrastructure projects. And that really speaks to trying to empower our society and transform sectors from a shareholding perspective to ensure that in growing our infrastructure, in growing our energy capacity, we are also transforming and also being impactful in the South African society and allowing them to see the benefits from a monetary and returns perspective coming back to them and not just flowing out to the country as well. I'll leave it there for now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your first intervention and for showing us. I would like to highlight that even we are far away, we are more than 24 hours flight from here. We have shared responsibilities and shared challenges and the importance of local communities and emphasize the knowledge and to focus on marginalized communities. It's really important. And also the role of the sustainability in the bank and the project of the bank. I would like to come back to you later for you to talk more related to the sustainability and these partnerships for development. Thank you again. I will I will use one analogy for our panel. So we are talking about infrastructure and sustainable infrastructure. So we'll make the bridge. So we are making the sustainable bridge from South Africa to India. And we would like to learn some of the experiences of Mr. Sanjay Kumar. Mr. Sanjay Kumar, you have more than 20 years working with projects for development, serving these local communities, serving the communities in India, and now you have this new role in the, let me not say it wrongly, in the Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office in the Government of India. Mr. Sanjay Kumar, could you please share with us some of your experience and past and current experiences in these development projects, the challenges, and how evaluations fit on that? The floor is yours, please.
Thank you. At the outset, I would like to thank NDB for having me here and talking to such a distinguished group of participants. I'm a career bureaucrat. I have been in this job since more than 2 decades. And I have been involved in various regulatory roles, developmental projects, social infrastructure, which had an element of sustainability and inclusivity. Now shifted to a role which, as bureaucrat, nobody wants to see their face. Now it has come to full circle. I have come to the evaluation role. So, look, I have done multiple postings ranging from handling the district assignments, projects. A couple of them I would like to highlight from my past experience. I have worked as Member Secretary of Andhra Pradesh Pollution Control Board, Hyderabad. And just to put the context in right perspective for the people who are not aware, India has got 2 bulk drug manufacturing hubs. One is Gujarat, second is Hyderabad. And Hyderabad historically was known as city of lakes with around 500 water bodies. All the water bodies had water of excellent quality. But because of these bulk drug manufacturing units, just to inform the audience about the enormity of the task, only 2 lakes were left which had water of potable quality, and all other lakes had either disappeared from the map or they were had real polluted water. One lake was inside the city, that is, we used to call that Hussain Sagar Lake. 0 dissolved oxygen and no aquatic life. In that scenario, I was given the task of rejuvenating that water body. So our task was twofold. One, to stop the effluents from coming to that river, and second, to treat the existing one. And of course, how do you stop the effluent coming to the lake? Only option is to shift the industries to outside the city limits. It was a Herculean task. We had to shift around more than 500 manufacturing units. The detailed planning was there. In fact, it was a teamwork where we had support of knowledge partners and funding from JICA and KFW. It was a project of around 3 years. Second part, how do you treat the existing water body? That also we had to scout for the technologies available across the globe. Ultimately, we zeroed down how the Thames River in London was rejuvenated. So that was experience as far as the Pollution Control Board is concerned. Second, I would like to mention about my experience in Tehri Garhwal when I worked as district magistrate. Tehri has got the biggest hydropower project in India. That's an earthen dam in a seismic zone of 5. And the hydroelectric power projects involve large-scale displacement of local population. Around 700 villages had to be displaced from there. And I was involved in creation of relief and resettlement infrastructure for them in the places outside the Tehri district. So that was a very, very different kind of task because, generally people from mountains have got very, very strong sensitivity towards green infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure. So that ranged from choice of the technologies for their houses, for the road construction, At the same time, we had to create employment opportunities where they don't feel out of place because they had never stayed in places outside the mountains. So these were the two things which I was involved with. Coming to the current role of DMEO, we are the national monitor and evaluator for all the initiatives of federal government. So broadly, I can describe our job into 6 parts. Just a brief introduction. We have one output outcome monitoring framework where measurable indicators for all the government schemes are fixed in consultation with the implementing ministries. And idea is to introduce a greater sense of accountability and transparency in public expenditure. So this we are doing since last 4-5 years, and this entire document is presented to the parliament along with the federal budget. So this is a mammoth task which we take almost every year 8 months to finalize that document. Second part I would like to talk about, we have one data governance quality index. You know, governments are generating lot of data nowadays. But our task is how to ensure that this data is of good quality, it feeds into evidence-based policy making. For that, we have studied the data maturity models of existing at that point of time in 2017. We came up with a framework where ministries are asked to self-assess themselves on the parameters of how do they collect data, how do they validate it, how do they share it intra-ministry as well as inter-ministry, and are they doing the right kind of using analytical tools so that it can feed into evidence-based policy making. Third part, of course, evaluation we do of all the government initiatives. It involves process evaluation as well as post-facto evaluation. We do infrastructure review of the government, federal government ministries. This is one of the tasks which has been given very, important. At the highest level, it is monitored. In fact, it is monitored directly at the level of Honorable Prime Minister. It's almost a 6-month-long exercise where we assess the ministries on the parameters of how they have performed in the previous year, what are their milestones, both medium term as well as large scale, long term milestones. Idea is to, one, have a framework where public expenditure is going in the right direction, the way Parliament has mandated. At the same time, to prepare the ministries to look forward so that India can be taken towards on par with the developed countries. One more initiative which we do in DMU, that is called, we monitor our performance in various kind of global indices like hunger index, like gender index, and we help ministries prepare an action plan where they can reform their practices, identify the issues on which they are not doing well, and so that India's position can improve on these global indices. These are the broadly tasks what we do in DMEO. So I think I'll leave it at that point.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Sanjay Kumar. It was really interesting, and I think really clarifying the challenges of moving from project implementation to project monitoring to be someone that's bringing the development, and then somebody that you have to run away or people run away from you because you're evaluating their job. And we would like to listen more about this new role you're developing in the DMEO in India. But moving ahead with our bridge, our sustainable and inclusive bridge, we came from South Africa to India, and now we are going deeper in our countries, in the rural areas. So that's why we have Ms. Xiaojie Zhan, Regional Manager for Asia, South and Triangular Cooperation in IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development. Based on all these experiences and all this sustainable infrastructure for inclusive and sustainable development, what's the role of IFAD, and how can we link the rural infrastructure and inclusiveness infrastructure with what our colleagues are doing. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Henrik, and good morning, colleagues and friends. Well, I start by introducing how IFAD and what's IFAD's role in maintaining sustainable rural infrastructure. I would really like to thank these two colleagues who just shared their experience from South Africa and India, because both of them mentioned a key word, underserved people. And this is where IFAD priority and target group stand in. As an international financial institution, but most importantly, we are a UN specialized agency. Our primary target group is those smallholder farmers living in the really remote areas, in the rural areas of all developing countries in the global south. We have NDB to ADB, other international financial institutions build up very successful infrastructure projects like airport, schools, and other facilities. However, have we ever think about one question? For those smallholder farmers who are living extremely far and living in the extremely remote areas, how can they access to these big infrastructures established in the urban areas? And this is where IFAD works. By building up the last mile between the rural areas and the urban cities, we are trying to enable, by using the limited financial resources we have, and enable the smallholder farmers really have the access to market, to the airport, to the roads, to the schools in the cities, and enable their have a better well-being of their lives. And how you may ask another question, how IFAD do it? Because as compared with EBRD, ADB, NDB, and other major financial institutions, actually IFAD have a quite comparatively small size of financial resources. And the majority of IFAD resources are provided to the developing countries either in the form of grants or in the form of highly concessional loans. Due to this special nature of IFAD's financial resources, one of the major mechanisms we're using is to do co-financing. I would like to give a quick example. Is we have one typical rural infrastructure projects in Bangladesh, where IFAD directly working with Asia Development Bank, KfW in Germany, and the government of Bangladesh, which we're trying to build up the resilience of the people in the southwestern of Bangladesh, enable them to have the infrastructure facilities which can still be used in the special circumstances, including the weather shocks, the monsoon seasons, etc. Although IFAD may not be able to provide a total size of this project, financial size of this project, however, the limited financial resources IFAD provide would always serve as a seed money and would always be ready to provide to the smallholder farmers, and would always try to use our special role, both as United Nations Specialized Agency and also IFI, to leverage support from our counterpart colleagues from the government and also from other MDBs and IFIs. I hope we will continue this mandate, but very likely we would rely on an expanded partnership in this regard, and also increasing the support through South-Southern cooperation to expand this initiative, trying to build up the resilience and the inclusive of the infrastructure in the rural area. I will stop here, but I very much look forward to the further interaction with also colleagues from the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Shajeja. I would like to highlight some of the things that you said, especially the example in Bangladesh, that it shows that non-institution can do anything by itself. So the partnerships, cooperation, and leverage of experience is really important. That's why we also have this really distinguished panel with different experiences that can build up different approaches and build up resources for the underserved groups. I think this is one of the key takeaways. We are just at the beginning of the session, but it's already one of the words that are appearing and the key driver of most of our panelists. And also, to keep building our bridge, our sustainable bridge, we need roads. So we cannot do just only big bridges. We also need the rural roads to connect and going for our journey to development. I would like to pass the word to Madame Veronique Sauce-Lozac. And you can build a big bridge for us because you have a vast experience here in Asia. Now you're in a new role in Europe, in the European, let me not say wrong, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development as independent evaluation chief evaluator. So you have a vast experience in building these bridges, and I think we can learn a lot from these bridges from the south and the north, and this cross-fertilization, and especially to serve the unserved groups. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not sure that I build the bridges, but I am maybe one of the brick in the bridges, hopefully. Well, first, thank you very much for having me in this panel. I really love the diversity of perspective that this panel is bringing. And that's really the beauty of an event like the Asian Evaluation Week, which says Asian in the title, but it's much more than Asia. It's really also about a lot of South-South and North-South knowledge exchange. Definitely the experience that I've had in Asia is not fully transferable, but very useful now that I work in another part of the world. Maybe I can clarify also the fact that EBRD is a European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, but and it was created after the fall of the USSR to help some of the countries to transition to a market economy. But European doesn't mean that it's just looking at the European region. It's actually much more. For example, Mongolia, which is not part of Europe, is one of the countries covered, or there are projects in North Africa, Egypt, Morocco, and there is also now this big vision of expanding to sub-Saharan Africa. So it's a bank that is also very much building on this vision that there is a lot to learn from each other across the different continents. I don't think we're going to South America soon, though. So, and going back to the idea of infrastructure, of course, we all are convinced here that there is a huge need for infrastructure. What we hope is that there is a demand for sustainable and inclusive infrastructure. And of course, that means for our institutions to put more emphasis on not just building roads and bridges and harbors, but how we build it and what type of infrastructure we're putting in place for the bigger goal that we have of being more inclusive, including for underserved communities, underserved communities, and also for of course sustainable development, and that's really a focus of EBRD as well as all of our institutions. So this common goal, we are sharing also this common intention to build in a more sustainable and more inclusive way. If I turn now more to evaluation, I can say that in our department, at the Independent Evaluation Department of EBRD, we are doing evaluation at different levels when it comes to infrastructure at the project level, also clusters of projects where we bring a few projects together because they have commonalities, and we want to check what insights we can get from evaluation from these commonalities. So it could be a cluster of projects from different countries. And we also have sector evaluation. So just a few examples. We had recently a sustainable infrastructure operation in advanced transition countries. And just to mention, the transition in EBRD language pretty much means development in other MDB's language. So that was a 2021 evaluation. We also had in 2020 a cross-border connectivity cluster evaluation. So all of those are available online. And we are currently working on a sector evaluation on transport. And that's coming soon. And it will focus on sustainability, but also on private sector participation, because that's another focus of EBRD, which is to focus on mobilizing the private sector, because we all know also that there won't be meaningful development without the role of the private sector, and that includes also in infrastructure. One evaluation that I would like maybe to highlight in this panel is an evaluation that we published recently at the beginning of this year on Green Cities program. So it's at the municipality. So my colleagues mentioned rural populations. So let me now put emphasis more on the cities and the urban population. The UN is projecting that there will be an additional 2.5 billion people living in cities by 2050, 90% in Africa and Asia. 70% of the greenhouse emission in 2020 was from cities and the urban population. But also the urban population is very vulnerable. So it makes sense also to look at the municipal level and the subnational level. And that's what we did when we looked at EBRD's program of Green Cities, which is a flagship program that was started in 2016. And we used, to look at it, we used a mixed method approach with reviews, data, interviews, and 3 case studies, including Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. It's an interim evaluation, which means that the methodology is a bit different and the focus a bit different. And we all know so that to evaluate infrastructure project, we need time. Those are projects that are built over 5, 10, 15 years sometimes when there are some crises like COVID or any other issues. And it's, having an evaluation after a few years in infrastructure is necessarily more of an interim evaluation than looking at the impact of the project. So because it's an interim, we looked more at the design of the project, the relevance and the efficiency. And we identified a few elements. We looked very much at the local ownership, because that's what the project claimed to be doing, basing its investment on an action plan developed by the municipalities themselves. And we found in our evaluation that even though that was quite successful, there was a need for EBRD to be more localized. That means still making sure that also EBRD itself was being more on the ground and working very closely with the municipalities, but also that there was a lack, and that's something we found, and that you mentioned also sometimes, a lack of data, of course, and monitoring and reporting. And it's something that we say very often, but I think that we should continue to say it as long as it's really a problem. But there is a lack of data that's collected. And I think that's something that I want to highlight, because we are quite a few evaluation departments from different MDBs, and we all face the same issue. But there is also an effort that we should do among ourselves to try to see what type of indicators we think would be necessary, and try to lobby, and to be more coordinated, and ensuring that we push for the right data and the right information to be collected, so that our evaluations also could be a bit more coherent and consistent, and that we can compare what we find. We found also some benefits, networking, a lot of demonstration effect, and a lot of knowledge sharing across the different cities, and of course more emphasis on sustainability in infrastructure. Maybe one of the challenges that I would like to highlight, which was a challenge for the evaluation that you can find in other areas of infrastructure, is that it's complex to evaluate a program when there are different layers of decision making at subnational, national, and supranational sometimes policies. Again, for infrastructure, one of the big challenges is the length of the project. So it takes time before the project mature and before we can really say something clear about the results and the impact. And it's very difficult also because of that length, but because of many other reasons, to have attribution, to clearly say that it's because of the highway, for example, that took 15, 20 years to build, with multiple players, private sector and sometimes public sector and multiple IFIs. It's very difficult to attribute the benefit to a specific MDB or a specific institution. And maybe I will just finish by saying that what we need in evaluating infrastructure is to have a holistic approach, to make sure that we look at the intended and but also non-intended benefits and disadvantages of the projects, but also that we look at the policy environment. In the case of EBRD, it's very often part of the package. There is also policy dialogues and technical assistance. And that's important to look at, to evaluate also the quality and the impact of this assistance. So I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Madam Veronique. Thank you for a lot of insights, a lot of information in a short period of time. I noted so many things that I would like to add up, but we have short time. But definitely, again, the local capabilities, this important knowledge sharing and knowledge experiences from city and rural, and the movement from rural to cities, how one impact the other. This is one of the further discussions that we can have with IFAD, and especially how to cooperate in these areas. Also, the lack of data. I think this is, we have been saying this the whole week, and we will keep saying this the whole year. I hope not so long, but lack of data and this holistic approach. And I think with this first round, we cover the whole world. Like we covered South America, we covered Brazil with the intervention of Chao, we cover Africa, we cover Asia and Europe. So moving on forward, I would like to pick up in the sustainability. So since the key focus here is inclusive sustainability and inclusive development. So Lungile, Madame Lungile-Ton, I would like to understand a bit more, and I think it's really important for our public to have this different view. Again, different countries, different continents, but same challenges. So could you please tell us about what are what's DBSA doing and the challenges facing with sustainable development and sustainable development projects? How is the bank facing it? Also, again, we here talk about private sector, public sector, and you're kind of in between because it's a public bank, but working more as a private, more or less like a private bank. So please, could you share some of the challenges and ideas and what DBSA is doing in sustainable development and how ESG agenda is being implemented? Thank you.
No, thanks, Hendrik. You know, our bank has a huge responsibility when it comes to driving infrastructure development, and also ensuring that in what we do, we are cognizant in terms of being sustainable, making sustainable investment, and be cognizant of ESG matters, and also inclusivity, as mentioned before. And, you know, the ESG aspect is you know, it's one could say it's probably an easy tick because there are standards, there are policies, there are frameworks that one can look to for best practice in order to apply and to assess in projects, in infrastructure projects. the part that is always, you know, subjective to the individual who is investing is the inclusive part. And what the South African government has done with a flagship program that started over 10 years ago in addressing the energy constraints in the country. The previously mentioned program, which was the Renewable Energy Procurement Program, a key emphasis over and above the technical offering that each program would provide was highlighting the economic development aspects of each project in the procurement process. So what that meant was socio-economic development imperatives had to be outlined, and these include ownership, local content, job creation, management control, particularly in women, and skills development. There was also a key focus on enterprise supplier development and also other socio-economic development. So each project had to outline what their plan was in terms of achieving all these socio-economic imperatives within the program. And really that speaks to what our mandate is. You know, we need to be impactful in what we do, and also outlining the impact that it has on women as well, which are previously underserved, you know, from a gender equality perspective. Gender mainstreaming is quite a key aspect within the bank as well, in ensuring that we in the progress that we are making in infrastructure development, we are also addressing gender equality within what we do. And the whole procurement program has really ensured that investment in enterprise supplier development is also intentional by the projects that are being implemented, in a way that all these aspects are actually outlined in agreements that these projects sign with the government. So they are in a form of obligations that they have to adhere to throughout the construction and operational period of these projects. And they have commitments from a financial standpoint, as well as commitment from achieving the various job creation, the various local content, ownership, etc. So the projects actually had to commit a portion of their revenues as well to support economic development in the communities where the projects are allocated. And there's a reporting mechanism that keeps everyone whole and ensures that what was intended was actually achieved. And that a reporting mechanism is done on a quarterly basis to the office that manages the program, which we refer to it as the IPP office. And that IPP office actually reports to the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Those projects have to report on a quarterly basis what they've achieved vis-a-vis what the obligation was. So what the target was that they had to achieve under all the aspects that are previously mentioned. And just to give you some statistics, you know, in terms of the impact that the program has had, and also the benefit in the monitoring perspective in having that data, that statistic, allows you to assess the actual impact that these projects have had in the country over and above the foreign direct investment that it has had, as well as also the increase in energy capacity that is much needed in the country that it has had as well, and also the CO2 emissions, etc. But just at a broader level, just to highlight some statistics, on an average basis, Black local communities own about 9% of these projects versus a target that was 5%. So these are statistics from March this year that have been published by the IPP office. So this is public information that they publish on a periodic basis in terms of the outcomes that have come from this infrastructure development in the form of the renewable energy programs that have been invested in, and the NDB was also instrumental as well in DBSA investing or funding into these projects by allowing us to provide competitive funding into these projects as well. Another key statistic is, the average shareholding by Black people in engineering and procurement construction contracts. So these are the contractors that are now constructing these projects. Is the average shareholding is approximately 22%, which is, marginally 2% higher than the 20% target, which is really something because we went from a zero base to now this 22% versus the 20% target. And just some of the also key outcomes as well is that the program itself has mobilized about $18 billion investment into the country, and that's quite commendable. And really, this has translated to 11,374 employment opportunities for women. So not only do we track employment opportunities on a wider range, but we also track employment opportunities for women. We also track employment opportunities for the youth, which is 35,000, just over 35,000, just for the youth as well. And I mentioned earlier in terms of the economic development commitments that each of the projects has made. Now, these commitments are in the form of financial commitments as well, where a percentage of the revenue is pledged to programs, right, that allow the projects to plow back into the communities where these projects are located, which is often remote, underdeveloped areas that are in much need of development, in much need of jobs, and in much need of social infrastructure as well. And so we refer to this spend as ED and SED spend, so economic development spend and social enterprise development spend as well. Just to give you an idea of what the spend has gone towards, 49.1% has gone towards education, about 15.4% has gone towards social welfare, 20.8% of this has gone towards enterprise development, and the latter has gone to healthcare as well as general administration. Really, these commitments have allowed these communities to go from nothing essentially nothing to what we see as being plowed back by these projects being having invested in this. So the program really ticked the boxes in terms of ensuring that in attracting foreign direct investment, we are also sustainable in the way that we are investing. So we are investing in sustainable projects. We are investing, we're ensuring that the infrastructure that is deployed is inclusive and inclusive all around, inclusive from an ownership perspective, inclusive from a job creation perspective, inclusive from ensuring that there's women in management, there's women in ownership, there's development programs aligned within the local communities where these infrastructure is also constructed as well. And often what the projects try to work with as well is local communities in identifying what their social imperatives are in ensuring that whatever programs that are being deployed within within those communities actually align with the needs of those communities as well. And that's the crux of ensuring that what we are doing is as inclusive and as impactful as possible as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lungile. Was a really impressive and really impressive numbers, and congratulations for achieving the target and overpassing the target. It's really impressive. The time is running really fast. I will also like to open questions for the public, but before I still have one more question for our panelists. So please be concise, and then I would like to hear from the public some questions. But Mr. Sanjay Kumar, you talked that you made this transition from projects to DMEO to becoming an evaluator. And so can you please tell us about how was this change and how these challenges are you facing and what you have been implementing in this time, especially regarding the infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure, as you mentioned before in the first intervention. Please, the floor is yours.
Look, India is now the third largest economy and on the course to fifth largest to be precise, and on the course to become third largest in less than a decade. In Indian context, infrastructure investment has a multiplier effect of 2.5. So there is a lot of focus on creation of infrastructure. In fact, during the past decade, we have seen unprecedented rate at which infrastructure is being created in our country. We have prepared one national infrastructure pipeline where we plan to invest US $2 trillion by 2025 over a span of ongoing 5 years. And when it comes to inclusivity aspect, how this infrastructure is being planned, I would like to mention about our national plan for multimodal connectivity, where the existing infrastructure of the federal government, provincial governments, city governments have been digitally mapped on a platform that helps us to identify the missing links, unserved areas, to plan our social infrastructure, to connect these areas to commercial hubs. When it comes to exclusive social infrastructure, we have got a number of schemes. I would like to mention a couple of them. We have one Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana where we have connected in the last decade all the rural habitations with a population of 250 and above. Talk about digital infrastructure. Our unified payment interface is one of its kind solution for instant payment through mobile. This has been enabled through mobile. Of course, you can operate through desktop also. You know, India has got one of the highest penetration of mobile phones. The same cannot be said about the laptops and desktops. So what this UPI has done, that it has brought the rural people, which are almost 2/3 of Indian population, into this digital payment network. It has led to their financial literacy and, of course, the long-term objective of financial inclusion. We have one scheme that is a national level housing program. We call it Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. That is housing for all the people who know the need of houses. And one thing is very important to note, that all these houses are registered in the name of the woman of the house. So that is one of the ways where we try to bring the inclusivity aspect in that. We have created more than 160,000 health and wellness centers. Basically, idea is that to entire your healthcare sector so far, before this particular initiative, it was on focusing on the curative aspect. Now these centers, what they are doing at the primary care level to promote well-being, wellness. So that is something which is a new initiative where this country is working on. At the same time, for tertiary care, we have got one Ayushman Bharat scheme where a health insurance coverage of 5 lakh rupees has been given to every poor family. They can get their treatments in the choice of public or private hospital. So these are a couple of that. One more scheme I would like to mention, the Almut evaluative aspect. RCS Udan, Regional Connectivity Scheme, where we have planned to develop 100 new airports in the unserved areas across the country. Already 80 have been completed. When it comes to the evaluation part, look, India is a diverse country where we have got 1600 languages, 22 officially recognized with the script. We have people of almost every faith in our country. Geographical diversity ranges from Himalayas to Thar Desert. We have got islands, dense forest. In such a scenario, not only implementation, in fact, evaluation also becomes a challenge. And generally, in a democratic setup, the government schemes are made available to every deserving person. So how we are evaluating their impact on the marginalized and underrepresented? So we follow the RISI framework, but we have added an element of another E that's called equity. Equity is basically to measure the inclusivity aspect of that. So what we do that while we design the samples, we develop the questionnaire, specific questions are inserted that out of the selected beneficiaries, at least this much minimum should be from people who belong to indigenous group, women or scheduled caste people. And the findings have been really good, that whatever evaluations we have done in the last 5 years, there's important findings that in rural areas, women have benefited more when it comes to income generation, when it comes to their health care. At the same time, there is a marked increase in access of the government benefits for the indigenous people and scheduled caste people. And in our evaluation, we have introduced cross-sectional themes. Cross-sectional, to give a couple of examples, one is gender inclusivity, second is allocation for the indigenous people and the scheduled caste. So this way we try to mention, include that inclusivity aspect, that how the most needy people are getting the benefit of our interventions. When it comes to sustainability part, there has been massive push in the renewable energy sector in our country. Our share of power generation from non-fossil fuels have reached 43%. Solar energy, we have added the third highest installed capacity in the last 5 years. In fact, we now have the Asia's largest solar park in one of the states of Madhya Pradesh. So I think, given the time constraint, I would like to leave at this level. Okay.
Thank you. We don't want to take too much time of the lunch. We'll eat some of your lunch, but thank you for sharing the diversity of India and the challenges you're having. It's really impressive, and congratulations for the job. I would like to, so since you said about this, you talk about these difficulties in projects in evaluation, I will go to Veronique again, since you have this experience and talk about the mixed methods and methodologies. Which are the big key and big challenges to evaluate this kind of projects, this so diverse projects with so diverse population, and the methods that can be used since we have this evaluation week. And please, I really need to hear from the public, so I will give you some
Yeah,
minutes.
I think the challenge will be to
Another
respond to
challenge.
such a huge question in a few seconds or minutes. So, and I would like to hear also from the audience. So maybe just a few keywords. That's all what I would say. Maybe the key challenge, and you mentioned the diversity, is to make sure that the evaluation has a holistic approach and looks at a broad range of issues. I think relevance is a criteria that's not such relevant anymore, because it's already, yes, definitely there is a relevance for infrastructure, but what is important is for what type of infrastructure, for which audiences, is really to look at the different audiences. Ensure also that in the process, the communities are also heard, that everybody has a chance to raise a voice. As I mentioned also earlier, that it's not just the intentional benefit, but also the unintentional, unexpected benefits or disadvantages of the project that has, and that's very often under evaluated for infrastructure projects. So maybe an opportunity in the future is to use more of the IT tools to be more efficient in our evaluations. And maybe I'll stop here so that there is time for others to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this really impressive fast intervention. And talking about these challenges, Shaujia, please, did you face any of these challenges in these projects you have been implementing, especially in Southeast Asia? You talk about this Bangladesh project that you implement in 3 hands with KfW, and so can you please share some of these challenges and the difficulties for monitoring and implementing both of them?
Thank you, Henrik. And also considering the time limitation, I will also be as quick as possible. So for this co-financing project in Bangladesh particularly, because it has been co-financed by both IFID together with Asia Development Bank, KWF, in Germany, and the government itself. So it means the involvement of different components might be led by different institutions in terms of implementation, etc. So the very first challenge started when we designed the project evaluation framework, because different institutions would have their different requirements, guidelines, etc., methodology as well, etc., and how to harmonize and consolidate all the requirements of different institutions is one key thing. And also, we, from IFID side, we very much respect the roles of other institutions, but we would like to make sure the co-indicators that we focus on, for instance, at the outreach, at the outcome level, at the output level, the reach of beneficiaries in the rural areas will be secured and included in the evaluation framework. And also there are other dimensions, I think Veronique have mentioned the majority of them, including it is very challenging indeed to measure the soften part of the project, for instance, the ownership, the different layers of policymakers during the implementation process, etc. So those are based on what is shared by other colleagues, I believe this is a common areas not only for IFID project, but for all for all project finance with different co-financiers, and in the future with that is also the beauty of Asia Evaluation Week. I think it is opportunity for mobilizing the insights from all of us, from different partners, different institutions, and from private sector, from the public sector. So it's an opportunity for us to discuss together and how to harmonize in the future. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the key takeaways here are listen to communities and give them ownership. I think it's the difficulties of implementing multi-projects with different partners. I would ask the floor people, you have questions, 1, 2 questions maximum. If you be concise, please. Anybody, any question? Yes, one there. You have any further question? Okay, thank you.
This is Alper Dinçer from Independent Evaluation Department of EBRD. I mean, thank you for the presentation. I learned a lot about NDB. I understand that the first strategy period is now completed. That did run from 2017 to 2021. We have any intentions to evaluate that? Is there going to be an independent evaluation of the first strategy?
From the NDB?
Yes.
Ciao, please, the floor is yours.
I think instead of doing just evaluation for the first general strategy, actually we're planning to do evaluation of 10 years achievement of the bank. To learn, because the bank opened the business July 2015 in Shanghai, China, headquartered there. Now we have all the regional offices in all the founding member countries, including South Africa, Brazil, Russia, and India last year as well. So, but in 2025, the bank will reach the 10-year history achievement. So we are planning probably do a 10 years evaluation to do a review what has been done in the past 10 years, which will cover, of course, the first general strategy, but also the second general strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chao. Any further questions? One question here, and I think it's the last one, so.
Thank you, Aaron Gerben from European Investment Bank. It's also a question to Mr. Sun. I saw your slides and the different percentages of your engagements in different countries. I wonder whether the bank has ambition to invest outside the shareholder countries.
That is a very good question. Actually, during the BRICS summit, we have NDB already signed the first loan with our non-member countries. It's a project located in Lesotho. But eventually, the project will still benefit the people in South Africa. So the loan already been signed during the BRICS summit. So, but I think our Article agreement doesn't forbid us to do so, but probably need some special approval review from our governance mechanism. But we do already have one loan in implementation in Lesotho. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chao. I will still 3 minutes from the lunch. Sorry, Araceli, don't fight with me. I will give 30 seconds. So we are in a hype word, so hype words for closing the session. So we start from Veronique coming this way. So Veronique, 30 seconds for your key takeaways, especially taking into consideration this Global South, the partnerships, the unserved, and the ownership of this, our beneficiaries, final beneficiaries. Please, 30 seconds.
30 seconds, I would say, the huge benefit is the diversity of views that we heard from, and the sharing of knowledge, and the need also for more of that, but also the need for more coordination and more collaboration among independent evaluation departments. Is that 30 seconds?
Less than that, but thank you. Like a Twitter or X, no. Yes, please, Lungile.
Thanks, Henrique. I think what has come out of here is that South Africa and other developing countries, actually have parallels in terms of what other countries within the region here is what key in terms of incorporating in their development. We all want sustainable development. We all want inclusivity as well. How that unpacks may be slightly different. But I think what's important is to be intentional in terms of outlining what you want to achieve from an inclusivity perspective and sustainability perspective, and ensuring that what you have outlined is adequately evaluated and monitored to ensure that the intended is achieved at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjay. 30 seconds for your final words.
For me, the key takeaway is today to come to know about the great amount of work being done across the globe on the inclusive and sustainable infrastructure part, and kind of strategies which are being deployed by fellow countries to address that. In fact, for the entire week also, the takeaway for my team has been that the issues with which we grapple sitting in DMU office in New Delhi, we realize that the same issues are there with everybody and everybody is trying to find a solution. But of course, it has been a great exposure for us to understand the views of others and what kind of different tools or strategies they are trying to use for finding solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shaja. 30 seconds for your key takeaways.
Thank you very much. I believe that in a world with a wide scope of increasing dividedness and conflict, not one single country or not one single institution can achieve everything in a sustainable way alone. So we need a partnership, and especially South-Southern cooperation among our developing countries in the global South to achieve a resilient future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are going to the end of the session. I would like to thank again Asia Development Bank and Asia Pacific Finance and Development Institute for organizing this amazing week. And the final words, also to be less than 30 seconds, I will use the hashtags. So what's the key takeaways would be hashtags. So the key takeaways is underserved group, hashtag underserved group, work for them. Hashtag partnership, hashtag inclusive, hashtag South-South cooperation, and hashtag ownership. Thank you very much and have a good lunch.